is something inside of Max. Let's talk about the UVing process to unwrap a model inside of Max. So remember that when we're unwrapping our models in Max, we're actually trying to take our model so that we can strip away the 3D look of our model and get it to lay flat so that we can either apply a texture to it, a 2D texture to it, like something in Photoshop, or we're trying to map something onto the three-dimensional surface. So we need a way to be able to, tell that surface or show the surface where the parts of the surface exist in two-dimensional space. Because right now we're looking at a three-dimensional form. So we can easily set up our UVs here inside of 3ds Max. So to start UVing this, let's look at my UVs. I'm going to go to my modify panel. And if I go in here and get an unwrap UVW, so I have my object. I'm going to say unwrap UVW, and if I look inside of my unwrap UVW, there is an edit UVs rollout. I'm going to say open UV editor, and you can see right now this is the mess that we're currently looking at. So this right here, all this in here, and this small little light box right here, this is my form of the girl. So that's the form of this girl in two-dimensional space. And right now the map is quite confusing. I don't know where the front is, where the back is. I really couldn't tell you what parts are what. So I need to change that. So to change that, I'm going to do this. Inside of my unwrap UVW, I'm going to go in here and go to polygons. And when I start to click on these polygons, I can click on them and hold control and keep clicking on these. Or I can actually come here to my marquee selection tool inside of Max. I'm going to click and hold. And when I click and hold, this flyout menu activates. So I can see I have a rectangular marquee, circular marquee, polygonal marquee, freeform marquee, but I also have this paint selection tool. So the little spray can, the one at the very bottom, is the one that I want to get. Because this one here allows me, if I hold down control, it allows me just to like kind of paint over the polygons that I want to select without having to click each individual one. If I want to take something away, I can hold down the Alt key and remove it. So let's say we hold Alt and let's get rid of all that right there. I just want to get the things that are directly facing that front camera. I don't want to have anything else selected. And I can even add this right here. So let's grab these. And what I want to do is here inside of my UVs, I want to go back over here to my command panel, and I'm looking at polygon, and this is the unwrap UVW that I'm currently looking at. So inside of my unwrap UVW, I have some different projection types. And right now I want to click on Planar Map. And you can currently see that the selection that I had, if I look at this right now, this is actually turned on. So I put Planar Map is turned on. And it's turned on the Z-axis, which is not right. When I'm looking at this, I'm actually looking at the Y-axis. So I'm going to click on Y. And when I click on Y, you can see that this image inside of my edit UVW window, I can see the basic shape and outline of this form. So now that I've got that, I can come back in here and I can turn off my projection, and then inside of this window right here, I'm going to just left mouse click and drag that out. That is the front of my dress. So you can see right now this is the front of my dress unwrapped, and I can actually look at it. Now I can also use my scale tool in here, and I can scale UVs and things of that nature. Or if I come in here and I right click and go to vertex mode, I can come in here and go to vertex mode and grab those UVs get my scale tool, and I can scale this unproportionally. And to make the scale, I'm going to come to one of these vertexes and just scale it just like that. Alright, so you can see I can scale those in there. I could get my move tool right here and just move those around. So right now, I've got the front of my dress unwrapped. Now I need to unwrap the back of my dress. So I'm going to come back in here, make sure I'm in polygon mode. And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go the same thing I did on the front. I'm going to do this on the back. Just going to paint over these right here. Just make sure I'm not getting any of the ones underneath. I want to make sure that when I'm selecting these, I'm selecting them kind of in a planar scenario, and really I'm trying to get the ones that the best define, one visible plane and break them down one by one. So those are in there. I'm not going to get any of these on the inside in here. One thing I probably need to do with this model, because it's purple, I'm going to change it to a different color. Let's change it to like blue. So now I can actually tell what's been selected and what hasn't. So for right now, I want to actually remove out of my selection these interior underhang pieces right there. I want to get those separately. So, because right now when I look at this, this is really the direction that, faces kind of forward. So I've got half of my body selected on the back. And for this, I'm going to do the same thing. Inside of my unwrap UVW, I'm going to come down to projection and choose planar. And we're going to project it on the y-axis, because that's the forward-facing axis. So on y, and you can see here inside of my UV editor, I'm going to get my Freeform Tool. So right here on the little menu up here, I'm going to grab that, and let's come in here and turn off projection. So I'm going to turn off my Planar Map projection, and there's my Freeform Tool inside of the editor. I'm just going to left mouse click and drag, and I'm going to drag the bottom of my dress down here. Now, the thing that's really cool is everything that's left in here, and this is one reason why I did the top and the bottom, the front and the back, because you can see right now this is left in there. So I'm going to do planar map on this, and on this one I'm going to planar map it on Z, and there's the neckline, and let's turn off the planar map and just move that out. And then I can see everything else that's left in here. All this right here, I'm going to planar map that as well. And you can see that is sitting all the way around. Turn off my planar mapping, and I'm going to drag this out. And I'm just going to scale this down. And actually I'm going to hold shift when I scale this down. Well, it's not hold shift. I'm going to just scale this down. Get my scale tool. Get proportional scale and just scale this down. Just like that. Let's grab all of this and scale this down just like that. And I can get my move tool. Now the tools that you would normally use inside of Max, like your translate tool, your move tool, those tools actually still are attached to the same keys. So if you were to press W, that's your move tool, E is your rotate tool, and R is your scale tool. So they still work the same way here inside of the UV window. So I can press W and get my move tool and move these. And since this part right here of my mesh is not very important, it's just the hemline, I can make that pretty super small. Because I think you have to think about with your UV spaces, you want to make your UVs the ones that are larger, or the things that need more detail, you want to make sure you add detail to it. So, and I'm going to get my scale tool. I'm going to come in here and left mouse click, get my scale tool right there, scale this and kind of scale this in a little bit, get my move tool, let's check out, that looks like it's pretty lined up. Now you have to remember and keep, kind of up. You have to kind of keep up with what you're looking at in your UV window, because it can become quite confusing, because if you look at this, it's really hard to tell which one's the back, which one's the front. Now I can tell which one the back and which one the front is just because of the way the lines are actually going on the mesh that I'm looking at in here. But it takes some time to get used to, this particular look. So inside of my UV editor, everything in here has to get my scale tool once again. So left mouse click on my scale tool and get the uniform scale up here. So everything in my UV has to fit inside of this little window. So this is the 0 to 1 space. So this is 0 to 1 space inside of my UVs. So everything has to fit inside of here. So I'm going to get this fitted up right here. And I'm going to try to use this as much as possible. Let's drag this out. Let's drag this out. And you can see even inside of the viewport or inside of the UV editor, when I click on or I select UVs, it'll show me where those UVs belong, because it shows me right here that this particular part of my model, this is the bottom hem around the whole dress part. So I'm going to take this, and for this one right here, I'm going to get my rotate tool, and I'm going to come right here and rotate this way. Get my move tool and move this in here. Grab this one guy right there and kind of drag him in a little bit. And that looks good. I'm going to take this and this. Grab this guy here. Get my scale tool. Scale this up a little bit. Like right about there. Drag this in here and boom. There it is. So right now I have unwrapped my model. I can close that window. If I come back in here and I look at this particular model right now, this model is now unwrapped, and I can see the green edges are the borders of the unwrapped pieces of my model. So you can see there's a border down there. This has a green border around it on the inside because naturally this is open. Border here, I basically cut it right down the side of my model and did that. So the UVs now are laid out. Once you've laid out your UVs, you can actually right click, you actually come to your close down your UV, your unwrap UVW, and you can click on that, and you can right click on this, and you can actually say collapse to and say yes. Once you have unwrapped your model, unless you purposely destroy your UVs, if you collapse the unwrap UVW modifier, your UVs are still unwrapped unless you put another unwrap UVW on this. And you can see when I put it on there that the UVs are already showing up from the first time. So the only way I could get rid of this is if I actually just took this and purposely destroyed all the UVs on here. But once you've made UVs for your model, those UVs stay inside of your model and they go with it. So if I were to take this, and I can prove that to you, I'm going to send this over to Mudbox. So I'm going to say send to, and I'm going to choose Mudbox and send as a new scene. And let's wait for a second and let this get sent over to Mudbox. So this is going in. So you can see here it is inside of, right here inside of Mudbox, and there's my model. And to prove that the UVs actually go from one program to the other, if I go here to UV view inside of Mudbox, you can see those are the UVs that I laid out inside of Max. If I go back here, now this is completely UV'd. It's laid out the way I need it to be. I can subdivide it. And I've got the basic form of my character. I can come in here and actually start to sculpt on this particular model to make sure that I have layers and stuff activated, and I can make sure I have mirror on X turned on. And one thing you can see that's off because of the way that it was set up inside of Max, she's not sitting at the center of the grid the way she should be, so my mirroring is off a little bit. Not a huge deal. I can always come back in here and instead of just using X, I can just use local X, and it's not perfect, but you know, so I could come in here and you know, kind of sculpt or do whatever I needed to do. Or I could come in here and actually paint this, get my paint tools and come in here and, you know, click on her and start painting color. I can come in here and paint my texture. So basically what I've done is I've given, and you can see there's the paint going on to my UVs. I've given this three-dimensional form a two-dimensional map that lets me map textures and all sorts of little things onto the surface of the model. And that's the basic point of UVing, is to be able to lay out your 3D model in a way that it can be painted upon or have texture added to. And this is the best way to be able to do that, is to make sure your UVs are laid out. Now there are programs that can help with UV layout. Some programs will do it for you to a degree. But I still think that it's very important that you know, as a 3D artist, that you know how to lay out UVs yourself, so that you can have some experience with that. Because a lot of people just depend on these automatic programs to map their UVs, and they never know really how to do it themselves. So when something's wrong, they don't know how to fix it. And you can see I'm just using a bunch of stamps that are already here inside of Mudbox, and I'm stamping on different, crazy stuff, and all that stuff's in there. So I can come in here and put this texture and stuff on here. So another question that I always get is, I have UV'd my model, I've laid it out, I've painted it inside of Mudbox. So how do I get all of this really cool detail from Mudbox back into Maya or into Max or whatever program you're using? How do I get all this great detail that I've done back into the program of origin? So I'm done with it inside of this. I want to get it back into the program that I made it in because I want to show how awesome I am and all those things like that. And we can see by sending it over to Max, say don't save. You can see that sending it over to Max, it actually sends it with the texture maps already on it. So if you just paint your stuff um, inside of Mudbox, and then you send it back to the application that you want it to go back to, and in our case we wanted to send it back to Max, you can see we don't even really have to extract the maps off ourselves. It will send all of that texture information back over for us, which makes it a lot easier for us. So, I could come in here and I'm going to right click. Oh, I'm actually going to make a new layer, and I'm going to make a new bump map layer and hit OK. And let's use white, because anything white will push out and anything black will push in on my model. So let's go in here and let's paint get my projection map, and you can see that's my bump map. So it makes it appear like it is actually over my model, or it's some kind of movement on my model. So I'm going to add a texture to the dress. So I'm just going to do this really quick. So you can see now it looks like my dress actually has some type of three-dimensional texture on it, which is pretty cool. It just appears that there's texture on my dress. So I've got kind of this laying around right here, and this appearance of texture on my dress. You can see there it goes. So I got it all over those, and I'm gonna say off, and you can see now it looks like there's like some kind of reptilian scale brick or whatever texture over top of my entire mesh. And I could change that and go get, another. Could do it like with spots, like leopard spots. I think one thing that's happening right now is just too strong. I'm gonna bring that effect down. Also, got to change the fall off to something a little bit softer, and I can come in here. It's gonna hit Q so I can hide it, and there we go. Just gonna turn this up. So I'm just kind of putting this cheetah print on top of that. So I'm just drawing this like bump map on top of this, and it looks really weird. I really haven't spent much time with this, and I'm just kind of making some changes on this. So here inside of Mudbox, when you're drawing these bump maps, or you're trying to create some type of painted surface detail, like some kind of textural detail, like what I'm doing right now, you want to paint these as bump maps. So bump maps work off of black and white and shades of gray values. So you want to paint these, this kind of detail with a bump map. And once the bump map is finished, I'm going to go in here to stamp mode, turn off my stamp, and turn off my stencil as well. So once this bump map is finished, I'm just going to right click on my bump map, and I'm going to say normal from bump, and just click normal from bump, and tangent space, make sure I choose 3ds Max as the compatibility, and hit OK. And when I do that, I'm going to actually come to my bump map layer and delete that. I don't need that anymore. And now I have my normal map, and the normal maps are actually a lot better at representing surface detail than bump maps are. Bump maps depend on really your lighting. If your lighting's not good, then it's going to make your normal maps your bump maps appear flat. Normal maps kind of use the same type of light detail, but they also take into account the direction of the light as it strikes the surface of your model and not just the map itself. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go here to File, and I'm going to say Send to Max, and I'm only going to say Update Textures and Current Scene. So I'm not going to send the whole thing again, I'm just going to update the textures. And it looks like if I update the textures, here back inside of Max, doesn't look like anything changed for me. Let's look at my shader. So I hit M to look at my shader. And let's go to compact mode. Let's see. Trying to find the shader that's on this particular model. If I look inside of my slate material editor, look all the way down at the very bottom, I can see there is my shader. There it is. And the normal map actually is attached to it. There's a normal map, there's a normal bump right there. If I look at it, so it looks like my bump map is just not showing up inside of my viewport, which is weird, but I can see there's the bump map. It's actually showing up. Let's see if we render this. There it goes. It's not showing in viewport, but it actually is on there, so you can see when I render, I can see that bump map detail. So it looks like there's actually more happening on the surface than actually really is happening on the surface. And I think just in here inside of my viewport, I just need to turn up some of my settings inside of my viewport to get my normal maps to show inside of here. It's really not necessary for me right now because I know my normal maps are working. And if I put a light in here, if I came in here and create light, and I'm going to do standard lights and do an omni. Let's close down the slate material editor. and just click a point light in here, get my move tool, and if I move this around and then render this, I can see that I'm getting the detail from the light, and it's picking up all that detail. So if I were to come back in here and let's say that I want to turn down the intensity of this, since this is the only light in my scene, I'm going to render this. You can see it's showing me all the detail. I could add a color to this, and let's say my color is going to be like red, and render this. You can see the details actually affecting the normals and the surface of my model. So realistically, from laying out your UVs to actually painting texture and getting that to come back into Max or back into Maya, whatever your program of choice is, it's really just that simple. And other than that, if you have any questions or comments or concerns, you can leave me a comment here on YouTube, and we will see you next time.